And this direct line is already somewhat different in that most of the questions, at least at the beginning now, yes, I'm noticing this trend. Now they're really trying to filter out these questions. Yes, it's already, the fifth hour or maybe the fourth. But the main questions are primarily economic in nature, concerning mortgages, the closure of state pharmacies, and the lack thereof. People seem increasingly focused on these economic issues, and it's clear that these topics are dominating the conversation during this direct line. That is to say, the medicines and pharmaceutical products that the state distributes to people for free, the government budget allocations, I don't really know the exact details, those very same payments to the so-called SVO participants and so on. You spoke about this quite a long time ago, if I remember correctly. Is it really? Yes. Well, the way Putin is already twisting things, I won't even mention how he claims the budget will be like it was in 2021 and so on and so forth. This is something since he knows how to lie, that much we know. Are people starting to open their eyes and truly see what is happening around them? And has that turning point already come? That moment when people realize, perhaps with a sense of surprise, that the state is taking the money they earn, the taxes they pay, and using it not for their own benefit, but to wage war and kill people in another country far from their own homes and families?
Well, I wouldn't call it a turning point, because a turning point is when people's behavior actually changes afterwards. But as for whether Russians' behavior will change once they fully realize this, I don't really believe in that. But of course, life is becoming hard, and they're starting to understand that the beauty of existence has disappeared, and that beauty is no longer shining brightly on the horizon, no matter what the president says. This feeling has come about because life has become quite hard, and for a lot of people already. After all, the majority of Russia's population has suffered from the war. Because after all, prices are rising for everyone, but salaries are far from being raised for everyone. So there is a certain group of beneficiaries, about 20% of Russia's population, who are getting richer from the war, while about 80% are living as they did before the war, or even worse. And people generally feel this. It shows itself. We see some, strange stories. People have started traveling less for tourism. There was a moment of surge when travel abroad was blocked, and Russians started actively traveling around the country. But it turned out to be expensive, and now people are stopping traveling because ticket prices, both for flights and trains, have gone up. In other words, it turned out that the country is inaccessible. Gasoline has become more expensive, and now even a car trip is considered a luxury. A car is no longer just a means of transportation, but a luxury. Food prices have risen sharply, and many items have become more expensive. And there are products that have become dramatically more expensive. Some of the record holders are, for example, fresh fish and beef. Rye bread has gone up by more than 20%. That's the price increase over the past year. Everyone is noticing this, and some strange symptoms of awareness are starting to appear. Today, one of my journalist acquaintances, Tatiana Rybakova, wrote something really well. I really liked it. She tried to assess the crisis and the change in mood using an indirect indicator. Marketers and economists have something called the lipstick index. In other words, when lipstick sales go up, it means a crisis is growing in the country. Women don't have money for expensive cosmetics, so they buy only lipstick, spend more on lipstick, choose brighter, thicker lipstick for their lips. But this kind of gives the feeling that you're still made up, you're beautiful, you're irresistible, you're attractive. So when there's a lipstick sale, it means an economic crisis is approaching in the country. It's a very well-known index. But she took two indices: the fact that people have stopped going to beauty salons. No haircuts, no manicures. Women have reached their limit. They can't afford manicures anymore. And again, even according to these statistics, people have started stockpiling food at home. No, apparently they don't have the feeling that the country is thriving and that wonderful, prosperous times are ahead. In reality, they're going back to the old difficult times when they did everything themselves, cut each other's hair, and so on. They did each other's manicures as friends and kept supplies of buckwheat at home to get through tough times. It seems that's what's happening now. People's mindset is starting to change. But that doesn't mean they'll go out into the streets and start demanding a return to the good life. They might say that it's all the enemy's fault, that they ruined their homeland and destroyed their whole family. It's like, we're all quiet and peaceful here. There's no need to punish us. Why are we being punished? We haven't done anything wrong.
Well, yes, of course. Who else, right? And what about the so-called elites, the same oligarchs? Are their money safe, or will they have to become Robin Hoods? Won't they start taking away their fortunes, whatever's left, and use it to fund the budget? At least some of it.
Well, why not? They will. It's already happening. Several Russian billionaires have already ended up behind bars. and their property is being confiscated. For example, they confiscated Domodedovo Airport in exactly the same way, if you know it, the best airport in Russia, the Lachev Airport. They took it as state property without any issues at all. They accused people of having another citizenship, but that's not a valid reason for seizure at all. They said, you own a strategic asset, you have a foreign passport, you're bad people, we're going to take it away from you. They imprisoned Vadim Mashkovich, also a billionaire from the Forbes list, and they're taking away all his ill-gotten property. All of this is happening, and it's only going to get worse. I've already said before that not a single oligarch from the Yeltsin era is in a safe zone. The only ones in the safe zone are those who came from the Ozero cooperative. But those who came earlier, they're all under threat. Everything can be taken away from them. I understand that when I say things like this, people say I'm just making up scary stories. But, I observe a very wide range of sources. And recently there was a rather amusing moment. The publication came out about how the situation is very dire. And it was from a rather pro-government source, I would say, stating that the situation in Russia's ferrous metallurgy sector is very dire. There's a huge problem, a catastrophe, because construction is declining and the metal, there's nowhere to put it. Exports are closed due to sanctions. Construction is falling because mortgages are expensive and the metal can't be used. Underutilized capacity, overproduction, factories need to be shut down. So now the metallurgists are starting to ask the government for help because due to government policy and the war, they've lost exports. They survived the sanctions and the war. But the publication was probably also saying something else, that there's no point in asking the government for help. You're all owners of metallurgical plants, billionaires, you have nice mansions, yachts abroad. So go ahead and sell them, and use your own money to finance your enterprises. So this conversation is already happening in Russia. You've had your fun, partied at all sorts of resorts. Now it's time to cover all your company's losses out of your own pocket. So the process has started.
Well, the process has started, but so far there hasn't been any reaction. Will there be an opportunity? There won't be. There won't be. And what about the possibility of taking money abroad, for example?
People are doing that. Well, look, Russians are actually wealthy. They understand everything just as well as I do. Because, to become rich in Russia, you really have to understand how the country works. They understand it even better than I do. And for many years, they've been moving capital out of Russia. If we recall 1922, there was an absolutely insane outflow of capital back then. A world record was set for capital outflow from a country in a single year. I think it was something over $200 billion that left. They keep moving money out, and now, by the way, there's a new twist of fate. There's a sense that a ruble devaluation is about to begin, and wealthy Russians are now frantically buying up foreign currency in large amounts. And apparently they're moving it out of the country through certain channels. It's a rather complicated situation. But I think the channels are well established, and they're sending this money somewhere. Well, obviously not to London anymore, nor to Dubai for that matter. There are plenty of other places, just so you understand, I'm not making any of this up. There was a really funny story this past year. The Russian tax service publicly announced that they would be conducting a thorough and comprehensive large-scale investigation of Russian family funds established in Dubai.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So what are wealthy Russians doing? To prevent their money from being taken away, they transfer it to Dubai, but they don't just keep it there. Instead, they open a new legal entity, a family fund. And then this legal entity is separated from the individual who is under sanctions. This way, there's a chance that neither foreign sanctioning authorities nor Russian ones will seize the money. And the money will go to the family. That's why they're moving such large sums and creating so many funds that the tax authorities got alarmed and said, we're going to check how much money you've stashed away in Dubai. So wealthy Russians, they understand everything. Well, just like I do.
Yeah, but it turns out they can't really do anything about it. No, they can't, or they don't want to.
Well, first of all, they can't, and second, they're afraid. I'm always explaining to people. People keep telling me, but Russian oligarchs, they're so rich, they're so powerful, my God, even the president of Finland said, well, Russian oligarchs, they're the only ones Putin listens to. We need to put pressure on them, then they'll stamp their feet at Putin, and he'll immediately stop the war. Well, that just means that Western politicians know nothing about Russia, understand nothing about it, and rely on some foolish people. So Russian oligarchs, they're all scared. They know at any moment they could be jailed and sent to sew mittens in a prison camp, that there's a lot of compromising material on them, and that there are ready-made cases against them. There's not even any need to make something up on the spot. That's why they're all mortally afraid. And they're not capable of anything at all. And really, they're not any kind of political force. They're more like some kind of stewards, so to speak. And moreover, they were allowed to live it up a little. That's a huge stroke of luck. If someone managed to take something out of Russia and hide it abroad, then that's doubly impressive. But for you to start creating some kind of party, rallying people for protests, saving the country as a patriot, none of that will ever happen.